Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, how does a good fertilizer program in the fall build the base for yield potential? Dylan Stuecker, our Agronomy Sales Lead, planted wheat in 15-inch rows near Fort Madison, Iowa. Hear about how this planting method works and how there are minimal yield differences in yield potential between 7-inch and 15-inch rows. We share more yield results from our West Point show plot. Can you guess the plot winner? Hear about how well our experimentals have done this year.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Lynn, and Dylan. So we're going to let Ben lead the discussion a little bit more on yields, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, with all of the amazing yields that we've had guys pulling off, now is the time where we're thinking about fertilizer, and pulling record crops off means that we need to be adding back to that. Back to the field. So
did my brother Henry tell you to say that?
Well, just from an agronomic standpoint, we really do need to be throwing the fertilizer back at it, because we've talked about on Cup of Joe before how there's some advantage to doing a fertilizer program for corn and a fertilizer program for beans, and not trying to lump all of that in together. But I kind of wanted to talk about an app that I use on my phone that has fertilizer removal rates. It's actually right there on my home screen. It's the AgPhD fertilizer removal by crop. It's actually pretty easy to do. So like what we're doing, Derek and I are working on the fertilizer for our winter wheat that we just got stuck in the ground here late this week. And it's a super easy app. Once you open it up, you scroll down to the winter wheat section, and all you have to do is go ahead and plug in. If I click the right button, you plug in your yield goal for what that field is, and it tells you what the grain's going to remove, what the stover's going to remove, and what the total is going to remove there. And what I like to do on a field that has a tendency to be depleted or has been mined over the years, what we want to do is we want to look at the previous soil test that we have for the field to make sure that we at least have the stover in that component. So then all that you have to do is add the grain removal back into that, and that's kind of how you build off of how much fertilizer do you really need. Because if you don't have at least the minimum, so like for phosphate here on 100 bushel wheat crop that we're planning on growing, the stover would remove 16 pounds. So you'd have to have at least 32 parts per million on your soil test to make sure that you have that in, and then you can just add the grain removal. So things I'm thinking about, things that we're definitely working on this time of year. I definitely like having at least 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen out on the wheat. So we're going to be getting that put on. Hopefully we get a nice rain to get that incorporated in. You can add some sulfur at this point in time to help promote tillering as well. So 7 to 1, 10 to 1, somewhere in that range is where guys are looking at really high yielding crops like this. For the total program standpoint, for 100 bushel wheat, it takes 24 total pounds of sulfur. So somewhere in the mix, you have to have that incorporated.
Well, remember, wheat is a lot like corn. The yield potential is determined early. In fact, wheat, the yield potential many times is determined in the fall. In other words, how you set up that plant and how healthy it is to get through winter. And phosphate is really critical to wheat in the fall. So it's really important that you fertilize your wheat correctly in the fall, because that is the base for building that yield potential next summer.
Correct. You get a lot of your tillering promotion from nitrogen and sulfur. You have a lot of the head development from phosphate. So, and then you get your standability from your potash. So it's all very important. If you can make it work, incorporating the fertilizer is really key too. We're in a no-till situation with the wheat that we planted here late in the week for seed production on the Mershman ground. But if you can get it incorporated, getting that phosphate in the ground, getting it in the root zone definitely is going to help with efficiency.
That's because it's immobile in the soil. So we like to get that down into the actual root zone. They can move, but you're talking about years to get it to move, half an inch to an inch in that soil profile in a no-till situation.
Correct. So that's why getting it incorporated is definitely helpful. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. So for our program where we're running right now, we're going to put 30 pounds of nitrogen on, we're going to put 65 pounds of phosphate on, we're going to put 120 pounds of potash on, and then 15 pounds of sulfur. And that's a pretty good fall program on winter wheat, knowing that you're going to be coming back next spring, adding more nitrogen and sulfur, and getting that wheat off to a good start.
Let's talk just a little bit about, we're down to our main variety that we're selling right now is Julie. And I think you need a little bit of a recap in positioning Maddie versus Julie. I mean, both are really, really high yielders. And just position them, because Maddie's our #1 seller. Julie is its sister, or as close as you can get to Maddie without being Maddie. So let's just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, Julie is a phenomenal product. It's probably a day, maybe 2 days later, so it's really not that big of a discrepancy on maturity. I think one of the reasons why guys have been a little bit softer on the Julie is just from a seed size standpoint. You have to plant, somewhere around that 140 to 150 pounds per acre to get your 1.5 million seeds, and because of that, we cut the price on it to make it as comparable to the Maddie as possible. For $1 per acre input wise. But when we look at the Julie versus the Maddie since 2021, when we were doing our the first trials on looking at how things were yielding, the Julie and the Maddie have literally been flip-flopping back and forth by less than a bushel per acre on our replicated trials. So some key advantages that the Julie comes up with that the Maddie doesn't have is that it is one of the heaviest test weight products on the market. And this year was a good year for test weight, so we didn't have a lot of guys having complaints. But if we had run into a year where we have a lot more rain during the harvest of the wheat, anytime you start with a heavier test weight product, you're further away from where that dock starts. So if you're running a 62, 63, 64 pound test weight product, you can get rained on it and it can back the test weight off as that seed shrinks and swells with the moisture. But it's a very, very heavy test weight product, very large seed, big yield, and it's excellent standing. It's got the FHB1 gene for head scab. Between the Julie and the Maddie, they're both almost agronomically perfect for disease ratings and whatnot. So it's got good rust tolerance. So it's a very, very, very stable product. You can put it on all acres. It's a healthy product. It's a good product. But
yeah, it's just the prejudice that farmers have against planting a bigger seed, takes more seed. Again, we did price it so that they'd be very comparable. So even though we have a slightly lower cost, it ends up being about the same per acre. So if you still need wheat, we still have one of our best varieties available for you to plant. And don't forget, you can plant wheat in 15-inch rows. In fact, Dylan, that's what you planted all our wheat in 15-inch rows. We used our soybean planter and planted everything in 15-inch rows. So, and there's not much of a yield reduction from 15s versus 7s, Ben. You want to talk just a little bit about that?
It depends on where you're at in geography, just like narrow row soybeans versus narrow row wheat. It's the further north you go, the tighter the spacing that you can get in, the higher the yield advantage is, and that also has to do with planting date as well. So if you're planting early, wider rows don't have a tendency to nickel and dime you as fast. So if you're planting it on time, and I still think we're right in the sweet spot. We're still in the first half of October during when we're filming this, so you can still be planting at that 1.5 million. In a week or two here, I'm having guys probably start push up their population a little bit. Start thinking about 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, but. From a total yield standpoint, if you look at all the university trials, it's probably 5 bushel less when you're in 15-inch rows versus the 7.5s.
And you can also go back in it and split those 15-inch rows with precision guidance that we have on these planters, or diamond plant it. In other words, just go crossways. So you don't necessarily have to have a drill if you're going to plant wheat.
Correct.
You can use your soybean corn planter to do that in 15-inch rows.
And the metering system. I mean, the entire time that you were planting, we planted 3 different numbers on 100 different acres, and when we were planning for what we were having. You know, we have just a little bit of seed left, less than a bag by the time we were finishing out, so you're not guessing on you know, weight and how much the drill's dumping and everything. You know, it's a precision setup.
Yeah, we have wheat plates to be able to plant wheat with that particular planter. So that's the investment that we made to plant wheat with that planter.
Yep. So
good. Lynn?
We were able to take the West Point plot out from a corn and soybean standpoint, and Dylan, you were part of on the soybean side. So I'd just like to go over a few of the quick hitters here that really stood out. I guess number one is might come to a shock to everyone that you know, Kennedy's won, and I know we've talked about this previously because we took half the plot out and then came back. But even as we got into the later maturity stuff, and here typically Austin Denver is probably the peak of our maturity zone. So once we get past that, we do see some drop off just because the plant themselves just run out of daylight to do what they need to do. So our weather patterns definitely this year, from what we're seeing for seed production, guys talking in the field, that 3.2 to that 3.7 seems to be our sweet spot. Obviously, in our yield results, Kennedy coming in fit that from both you know, being in the sweet spot for maturity and just Kennedy doing Kennedy things there. So the final total 91.65 bushels per acre on that. The Lincoln still held true to the number 2 spot that we were talking about at 82.92, which I think is just incredible that we can get that out of a early bean for our neck of the woods. You know, like I said, we're into that. Really, most folks that are in a non-seed production setting are planning that 3.3, 3.4 to a 4.2. So a 3.1 coming in and sticking its head in there is pretty impressive. Then it also come in third in a low pop trial that we did. In our test plot, toward the back of the test plot, we do some 100,000 planting populations just to kind of see how the different varieties handle the lower population. And that one came in number 3 at 88.18 and the 100,000. And then we get into some of the experimentals that are sticking their neck out there and showing us what they have to offer. I know one of them I'm pretty excited about is a 3.3, and I don't know if you want to allude to that one or give anyone maybe a sneak peek on what that one all entails.
yeah, so we have a 3.3 coming down the line. That is a Peking option. Peking is a different trait for cyst tolerance. So instead of the PI 88788, there's this different trait called Peking, and we're seeing very, very strong things out of this 3.3 and also a 2.5 Peking option that'll be taking the Osage's place. So I think, you know, MS Tech has done, I can tell when I'm looking through the MS Tech data that there's a heavier emphasis on getting more Peking lines in, and they're definitely sticking their head up.
And Peking's becoming more important as a different source of resistance for cyst nematode, is because the PI 88788 is basically starting to, you might say, wear out or segregate the populations where Peking is picking up those populations that PI 88788 is missing. So that's basically the future. We've got to look at more Peking products on soils that are having more and more problems with cyst nematode.
Yep.
And that's, we've talked about it before with Trinimco as well. It's just it's the new problem that we're identifying as a yield robber in our soybeans, and in places that historically maybe didn't believe that they had a cyst problem or has never been on their radar. There was a plot there by Oskaloosa that this bean in particular won the plot, and it would be an area that that I guess I wouldn't historically think that they would have some issues with some of that stuff, but obviously there is a yield component to this bean that has segregated away from some of the issues with Pekings from a yield drag standpoint. They're separating themselves from a yield standpoint, plus then offering the protection from the soybean cyst. So I think that's pretty exciting. That not saying there was anything wrong with the Osage. The Osages had performed very, very well in areas that cyst pressure was very prominent, But when we got into areas that maybe cyst pressure wasn't the issue, they kind of lacked just a little bit on the top end yield from that standpoint. And now we're getting some options from MS Tech now that you know, if the 3.3 fits your maturity, this is a very good bean to put in that situation that you don't necessarily have to have a cyst problem with it. So I think that's very exciting coming down the pike from MS Tech on that. I guess shift gears just a little bit. You want to talk about the corn plot and maybe one really big, glaring, obvious piece of information we picked up out of that?
Yeah, so we took the corn plot off about a week and a half ago, and the products we're most excited about really proved themselves. The 111 day won the plot, and we knew kind of going down the pipeline that was going to be a shining product that we were going to push, and it ended up at 272. And then after that, our 113 day took the next 6 out of the seven ranking spots. So that was another product we were very, very excited about going into harvest and then in the surrounding areas. And this is not the best dirt definitely around here. It was a old alfalfa patch, so it's definitely had some history with it. But it just shows kind of right there that you get the fertility right if you baby it with the nitrogen. Good things are going to come out of it. And then we just got news that our 111 day up in Bryan's area.
It should be what, northeast Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Yep, Sumner, Iowa, I think is what he said on his text.
Took the plot at 302, so that's very, very exciting. So, and then our experimentals, they're showing some life too. We kind of knew what experimentals we wanted to pay attention to, and they're kind of catching our eye in some perspective. So.
Yep, we're very excited about there's an experimental 115 day that looks really sharp. There's an experimental 112 day that's going to have a western fit for dry land and for the tough acre, and we're very, very excited about that. So yep. The 113 days doing what the 113 days supposed to. It topped a plot in Trenton, Missouri at Rodney Roberts' field that he had there. I would position the 113 day on the variable ground that has some yield potential to it. It's got a little bit better stress tolerance than what the 111 day does in my opinion, but even on a stressy plot like we had here, the 111 day can still reach out and touch it. So kind of what we've been preaching with our sales managers and our customers is that 111 days a little bit better dirt. 113 day can really go on about anything. So.
I think that's mostly, and I know we've talked about it a lot, is from a plant type standpoint. That 111 day tends to be just a little bit of a shorter hybrid when we get it in that stressier acre. Not saying that that's a cause of concern, but the 113 day throws a really good plant height on that stress acre. Hence, there on the replications that we had, it really stuck its nose out and showed really good consistency over those reps. And I think that's what we look for in those stress acres is, don't get me wrong, I love to see really, really high numbers on the yield monitor as I'm going across some of our acres that might be a little more stressy than most. But at the end of the day, I really want consistency, because it's all fun and games going from 300, but then when you drop down into the real stress acre and you get down into the the 40s and the 50s, that really kills your average. But I think this product really gives us an opportunity to flex that yield potential in those acres, and I think the 111 day is a very nice pair to that when we get into our more fast running dirt, that we have the ability to hit the high end, but also offer a little bit of stress, because we know probably 90% of our target audience here are our customers. Nobody probably truly has fence post to fence post, gravel road to gravel road, same soil type, with the exception maybe some of our good customers out east a little bit there. But we need that ability to play defense in areas that we can play defense, and take it to the next level on those good spots to make sure we're maintaining that farm average.
Yep, totally agree.
And by east, I mean Green Bay bottoms.
Something like that.
I thought you were talking around Bloomington, Champaign,
yeah,
Springfield.
Would you say their two soil types are?
Yeah, tiled and not tiled.
Right. So from a little bit different perspective too, getting away from West Point, what have you been hearing on yields?
two products that really stand out to me that I'm looking to be very excited about for our listeners to the south and our growers to the south. The new Denver has been a very, very consistent product in the plots that are coming in, whether that be over in David Williams area. We talk around the Kansas City, Sedalia area, down in Brett Ward, Southern Illinois. It's one that is either winning plots or is staying consistent in the top 5. And with that being in the top 5 against products that guys in those areas really love. I mean, it's those two products are outshining the Austin, and that's something that is a very, very, very staple product for those guys as well. So the Denver, the 3.9.5 experimental, or 3.9.5 experimental looks really good. When we come to the north a little bit, the EXP 2.0 looks to be hanging on very, very nicely. What's Turk's joke on if it starts with a C and it's in a group 2, it's a good bean. All of our group 2s. That's something that we probably, from a Cup of Joe standpoint, don't talk about enough. Our group 2 lineup is solid. I mean, absolutely solid. We talk about the group 3s a lot, but we have that same dominating factor in the group 2s that we do in the group 3s.
Yep. No, I completely agree. The one that has kind of shined that we've had a lot of flip-flop over in that 2-3 range. The Chippewas have been very, very stable. Had some plot winners. It's competing with the Cheyennes, and anytime we can compete with our Cheyennes, which is the staple in the 2 and early 2, the Chippewas are doing very, very, very well this year. So I'm excited for growers to get those pushed out there. So
talk about that one.
Yeah, no, I have this as our white mold plot. So we've talked about it on Cup of Joe when we were out in the field. We had a field 2 years ago, and that was absolutely just decimated with white mold. Looked like it snowed out in this field. And that field rotated to corn last year, rolled into beans this year, and we stuck basically Neptune through our Chickasaws in this plot, and it's one that like I said, we've talked about before. Depending on how you want to look at it, it's not exactly a heads up versus not heads up trial, but we had a competitive number right next to our Neptunes that was quite a bit later in maturity, and you're looking at the competitive bean was going 69, and our Neptune right next to it was going 78. So that's not exactly how the full plot rolled out, but when you're looking at an area that you could definitely see white mold in the competitive product that wasn't treated with heads up compared to an absolutely clean bean right next to it, is heads up worth that 7, 8, 9 bushel? I think it is in this individual instance. So I'm very, very happy we went down that road of seed treatment.
Yeah, and heads up is standard in starting line, our base seed treatment.
Correct. So every bean that gets treated from West Point and Tipton and Rough Diamond down at Olmsted, if it's immersement treatment, it's got heads up in it. So it was definitely a good move for this year. We're seeing lots of positive things out of it.
Correct. And we're seeing white mold in varieties that, from a testing standpoint, our breeders just aren't looking for it because it doesn't exist, in our later group 3s. And we get around that central Illinois range where Kennedy, Monroe's kind of shine. They're seeing some issues with white mold and some competitive products from that standpoint. So it's a very, very good and cheap insurance for those folks to have that, and it's something I look forward to as we progress in this white mold. I won't call it a pandemic yet, maybe, but as that disease continues to kind of creep its way down through the Midwest, as we get new varieties out and we start seeing some tolerances and maybe some later group 3s from an industry standpoint, that'd be interesting to know. But right now, we offer the best protection that you can get, and talking with those folks, it's very unfortunate when you get it, but seeing what we see here, if it's 7 to 8 bushels, man, that's the price of the seed treatment alone, let alone all the other ancillary benefits we're going to provide with starting line and starting line plus.
And speaking of price, the heads up value at the farm gate is $4 a unit. I mean, so and that's coming standard in our starting line. So don't overlook our seed treatment. when it comes to when you're pricing soybean seed, you've got to look at the seed treatment, because our product, our starting line and our starting line plus is the value that we offer in that is tremendous value. So, and it really makes a difference when you have problems.
Yep. Insurance.
Well, if there's nothing else for the cause, I got a few jokes for you today. The first one is, I don't know if you knew this, but I was robbed at the gas station today. Can you believe it? I called the police, and they asked me if I knew who did it. And I said, absolutely, it was pump number 6. All right, now the rest of my jokes, I'm gonna pick on my wife a little bit, okay? You know.
Does she watch?
No, she doesn't watch the world. But her friends might tell her, so anyhow, I'm not worried. Okay, for her birthday, I took my wife to an orchard, and we stood there looking at the trees for a half an hour. Apparently, she meant a different type of Apple Watch. Oh. Okay. I don't know if you knew this or not. This is pretty personal, but my wife and I are always fighting over the right way to hang the toilet paper roll. So we decided, you know, we're going to fix this. So we went to a therapist, and the therapist suggested we try each other person's way for a week. You know, role reversal. All right, the last one, since I told all these jokes about my wife, I told my wife I wanted to be cremated. She made an appointment for next Tuesday. All right. We hope that your harvest is going well. We hope that your family is healthy and safe. And we sincerely appreciate your business. And as you start thinking about your seed purchase, we hope that you think about Merschman Seeds. And we'll see you next week.